Hi everyone, it's Micca Evans, and I am here on day 5 to share with you how to make homemade beef bone broth. So you can make chicken bone broth, you can make beef bone broth, you can even use fish bones to make fish bone broth. There's lots of different, I kind of stay away from pork just because typically the bones aren't as clean. Pork isn't necessarily as clean as the beef, but if you can get a really good quality bones, go for it, because this stuff is liquid gold. There's so many health benefits. It's good for detoxification. It's a great source of collagen. It contains several minerals, essential minerals, calcium, magnesium, phosphorus, and potassium. A great source of collagen, so it's a great, clean way to get collagen into your diet, which is so good for our digestive system and for detox. It helps in reducing inflammation by getting this collagen and the bone broth in. It's great for our bones and our joints, and it's also good for hair, skin, and nails. So, homemade bone broth versus store-bought. It's just like anything else. You can buy some good quality and you can buy some junky stuff. So I highly encourage you, read those labels. Even if it says bone broth on it, look at the ingredients. Oftentimes there's sugar in it. There's all sorts of preservatives. There's all sorts of just junk in it. So kettle and fire, I just keep it on hand in case I'm out of my homemade or I need something quick and I don't maybe have time to thaw something. But kettle and fire is a great source of bone broth. They have it in the shelf stable on the shelf, and they have frozen also. I'm not sure that anywhere in Paola carries kettle and fire. If you read the ingredients, you can read every single word. So there's no sweetener in it. There's not anything junky in it. So kettle and fire is a great one. There are a lot more out on the market now than there used to be. So Whole Foods, Sprouts, all sorts of places like that have good qualities. You have to be a little bit more selective at what we have locally here in Paola. So read those ingredients. The alternative is homemade. So it's simple to do. There's lots of ways to do it. There's 3 that I can think of. You can use an Instapot, you can cook it on the stove, and you can cook it in your crock pot. The Instapot is super fast and just quicker. So that's the way I go. Before I had an Instapot, I've done it on the stove and I've done it in the crock pot. And you just have to be very careful because it takes 48 hours to cook it on the stove or in the crock pot. With that, there's managing it, watching it, make sure it doesn't boil down to nothing. It can happen. My daughter tried making it in her crock pot, and for 12 plus hours everything was fine, and all of a sudden there was no liquid left in her crock pot. So it's just something you have to watch. Those things aren't an issue in your Instapot. It keeps everything contained in there, and you're done in 2 hours plus. You're pressuring up and venting the steam off of it. So what I've done today is I have roasted some beef bones. They were frozen in my freezer. I use whatever bones I can find. I have some that I had that we had a roast, so I just have straight bones here from the roast, and I just threw them in the freezer in a freezer bag. I just have bags in the freezer of vegetable scraps and bones, and I roasted them all in the oven. I have a tray, I'll show you here, a tray of soup bones and beef bones. I have friends who get, a side of beef and they're like, I'm not doing anything with these. And so I gladly take them off of their hands, throw them in my freezer, and then when I need some bone broth, I'll make some bone broth. So the nice thing about the soup bones is you've got all this meat on the bones. I don't know if you can see, but there's bones and meat in there. I'll throw all of that in the oven at 450 degrees on a sheet of foil in the sheet pan. on 450 for about 40-45 minutes to really roast it and get it nice and charred. And then I throw all of that in my Instapot. So I'm going to do that now and hopefully not make too much of a mess here, but I'm just going to put all that in there. I'm trying to get all this as in an even layer as possible, just so that I can make it all fit in there well. And then I've got another bone here that I just used from a roast. So I've just got a variety of bones here and just trying to make a nice even level in my Instapot. Then after I get it cooked, all this beef that's in here, I will pull out and I'll use it to make some beef tips, or you could throw it in soup. You could do a beef vegetable soup while you're doing this detox. A lot of times I make beef tips and I use arrowroot starch as the thickener instead of flour or cornstarch. So I've got these nice bones and beef here. I'm going to throw that all in the Instapot, and just be careful not to fill it over the max level. I'm just trying to get that all pressed in there. Now I am going to take some vegetables. So anytime I'm making something for dinner and I cut the top and the bottom off the onion and the crunchy peel around the edges, I throw that all in a Ziploc baggie and put it in my freezer until it's time to make bone broth. I even have some carrot peels here. I'll peel my carrots, throw those in a bag, and I'll use that. You can also just cut up some carrots, cut up some onions, cut up some celery, and throw it all in here. But I try to use the scraps just so that everything gets used. So I'm going to throw some in here. Use up, that's probably the tops and bottoms of at least 3 onions. And then I'm going to put some of this carrot shavings in here. This is all just flavoring. You don't have to even use vegetables. The main ingredients for bone broth are the bones, a good quality water, so I will use filtered water out of the refrigerator or spring water, whatever I have on hand, and vinegar. 1 tablespoon of vinegar, and that's all you need to make homemade bone broth. The vegetables, the salt and pepper, all that's just some extra flavoring. But I'm just kind of pressing this stuff down here so that everything is staying below the max level, which I'm right at the edge of that. So then I'm going to take a tablespoon of vinegar. That is what pulls all of the collagen and all the good stuff out of the bones. So this is the key ingredient to making bone broth, and this is what makes it different than chicken broth or beef broth. This is what gives it that extra protein, that extra collagen. So I'm going to do a nice heaping tablespoon there. And you can use whatever apple cider vinegar you have. And then I'm going to put in at least a tablespoon, probably a couple teaspoons. You could do up to a tablespoon. These bones have not been salted. There's, if you have a rotisserie chicken that you use the bones from and there's salt on it, you may cut back on the salt. But since I haven't salted this any, I'm going to probably put close to a tablespoon. I'll do 3 teaspoons here. And then you can adjust it as you go. And when I say that, you can make multiple batches. That's the nice thing also about the beef bones. You can make multiple batches out of 1 set of bones. So I typically get 4 to 5 batches of bone broth out of 1 set of bones. So do not throw those bones out after the first batch. You will have good quality bone broth until probably the 4th or 5th batch. You will know because it will be really gelatinous. It will, when it solidifies in the refrigerator, it will be like Jell-O. And that's when you know you've got really good bone broth. If it doesn't gel, sometimes I make chicken broth and it doesn't gel, it's still good quality. It's just a bonus when it gets gelatinous. So, okay, I also have some peppercorns here. Just maybe throw in about 6, 7, 8, something like that. And then I'm going to pour water over my bones until it gets up to the top of the level of the bones. So it'll be probably a half a gallon of water or so. I'll probably not take it quite that high because I've got it pretty full. Trying to make sure I get this all pushed down. A little bit more. And then it's ready to cook. So now what I will do is I'm going to put the lid on. And then I'll try to turn this around. But see if you can see here. Want to make sure it's on sealing, so you push that. On mine, you push it back, but there's a little label on there that says sealing that will keep the pressure in. Then I'm going to turn it on manual. I'm going to push the manual button, and I'm going to push those numbers up to 120 for 2 hours. Whoops. And now it's at 120. That's all I have to do. It will do its thing for 2 hours. It will pressure up. That takes around 15 minutes for the pressure to build in there. Then it will cook and do its thing for 2 hours. And then you let it naturally release. Or you can put a towel over this and flip that knob to venting. And that will let the pressure release. But that towel helps kind of keep the steam from going everywhere. It kind of just goes into that towel. Then you take the lid off and maybe let it cool just a little bit, and then you'll strain it into mason jars or Ziploc baggies, however you want to do that. If you use mason jars, you've got to leave probably about at least 2 inches of headspace at the top. There's also freezing mason jars. The newer ones actually say freezing, and they've got a freezing level on there. They will bust if you put too much in there, and I've learned the hard way many times. I filled it too full, and then they crack in the freezer, and then the liquid gold has to go to the trash. So the reason I say liquid gold is it's so good for us, and it's expensive to buy. It's not cheap. So if we can make it, and especially if we can find bones, if we can get good quality bones, we have everything we need, and it's priceless. When you've had homemade bone broth compared to store-bought, the homemade is hands down the best. So also, I do have, I'm going to let this cook for 2 hours. There is another video in the group. If you go to the top right-hand corner to the search engine and you type in part 2, bone broth, that will show you how to strain the bone broth into jars. I'll show you my process that I use. There's lots of different ways, but I hope you guys will try it. At a minimum, get it into your diet. Try to buy some good quality if you're not going to make it, but if you can take some time to make it, it is so, so good. And like I said, with the beef bones, you get 5 batches of broth. So it's just depending on how many bones you have in there. You want to use 2 to 3 pounds of bones at least. And you'll get at least 2 quarts or more. Sometimes I get 4 or 5 in the beginning. And then as the bones cook down, I'll get less and less bone broth because you're just filling it every time to the level of the bones. But you still get a couple quart-sized jars of bone broth out of each batch. So you could make quite a few quarts of bone broth with just one set of bones. So anyway, I hope you guys will try it. Let me know if you have any questions, and hopefully you have a great day. Bye guys.